Where do I even begin with this beautiful show?
Stretch out with your feelings.
Breathe. Reach out with your feelings. What should I say?
Whatever is in your heart.
There can be no light
Without dark.
balance. Powerful light, powerful darkness.
It's cold.
If you saw my first video on this, the controversially named Dark Crystal Conspiracy, you know that I believe that the Dark Crystal universe and the Star Wars universe are in agreement with one another. Not only on the surface, two forces out of balance and unlikely heroes caught up in the middle, but also when you strip them down to the messaging and the symbols, they fit together in a strange harmony. Well, now that I've watched Netflix's Age of Resistance, I can truly say that I think that the story of the Dark Crystal is basically the Skywalker Saga. And more specifically, the characters of Thra are enacting the same story as our characters of the Star Wars universe. In my previous video, I covered how the Urskeks split into the Uru and the Skeksis, and how that parallels the split between dark and light, Jedi and Sith. I should also add masculine and feminine, since that seems more apparent to me now. Something I did not cover in my video, however, was the Seth material. Jim Henson was very invested in the teachings of Hinduism and Taoism and various New Age philosophies. David Odell, the screenwriter for The Dark Crystal, recalled in a 2012 article that Henson had extra copies of the book Seth Speaks, which he would give to collaborators, including to Odell and illustrator Brian Froud. The book was written by Jane Roberts, a science fiction author, who in 1963 claimed to have begun channeling a spirit named Seth. As she channeled this spirit, her husband wrote down her words, which became the Seth material. The Seth material is regarded as one of the cornerstones of New Age philosophy that developed in the West in the 1970s. While I'll leave it up to you to determine how profound these writings are, I can at least say that they have deep similarities to Hinduism and Jungian thought. That may be a crude read, but regardless, we can see how Henson's Dark Crystal universe uses these ideas of the self and of reincarnation.
The story runs deeper than you know, and you are part of it.
The Seth material views a soul as one self or entity progressing through reincarnations so that we may live different lives, because the great entity of God, or all that is, seeks to live various lives and experiences through its creations. So essentially, it is the self learning through reincarnation that is at the core of Dark Crystal lore.
Does nothing stay dead anymore?
In comparing this with Star Wars, we have to go back to midichlorians. Midichlorians are the conduits between the cosmic force, which has a purpose and a will, and the living force, which binds all living things together.
When a living thing dies, all is renewed. Life passes from the living force into the cosmic force and becomes one with it. One powers the other. One is renewed by the other.
Throughout all of Star Wars extended canon, it is suggested that the connection between the living force and the cosmic force has been severed or is sick in a way.
Simple you make it. Light and dark, as if there is one without the other.
By becoming a Sith. Never!
We will destroy the Sith and the Jedi.
Things are out of balance. Both in the Mortis arc and in the episode Destiny of the Clone Wars, we learn more about the struggle for balance that is happening in the world beyond the living one. Force beings are trying to find a way to fix something that has been broken. Yoda, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka all see and experience this, and while 3 of them become Force ghosts, Ahsoka, at this point in her arc at least, has taken a position as a sort of religious figurehead. We don't see anyone else in the saga who is represented in this way, wearing all white, carrying a staff as a matriarchal figure of sorts. In a much less science fiction way, the essence of the Gelflings collected by the Skeksis to extend their lives is representative of their souls. When the Gelflings are buried, their essence can return back to Thra, where they may be reborn, reincarnated.
Gelfling return to Thra when they die. That is the natural order. But when Skeksis consume essence, the Gelfling cannot return home. Thra is out of balance, thus the darkening spreads faster.
While the Gelflings don't have a midichlorian count, their essence is connected to Thra. Through this, they are able to dream fast. It connects them with one another and to the world around them, much like how the midichlorians connect living things to the Force and to the cosmos. In the Dark Crystal film, the Skeksis aesthetically represent masculinity and the Uru sort of represent femininity. But in extended canon, the Skeksis more so equate to feminine symbols than masculine ones. I found this really interesting because when they first split, the Skeksis are delicate and look as though they are taking off in flight, illustrating their need for knowledge and higher power. But the Uru in their early stages are represented as being grounded, their second set of arms extended for practical use. They are also covered with spirals, which is typically a feminine symbol. Depending on the perspective you want to adopt, either could represent the feminine or the masculine. Femininity can be represented in a need to take flight from the masculine society, as well as the need to connect with the earth. Masculinity can be represented as a need to logically explain where we are, as well as the yearning for new knowledge in a new place with new adventures. They are both the positives and the corruption of both the sexes through life and experiences and trials. In our world, men will often explore their anima, and women their animus. Not all masculine and feminine aspects are absolute. They vary per individual. So the split that occurs happens this way because it gets at the main problem with the Urskeks. It's relative, so it means something specific for them. These 18 were banished from their world because they attempted to use a crystal for a grand design that others saw as heresy. During their time on Thra, they were supposed to be atoning for that as well as exploring their darker nature to become more balanced. Their dark side wants power and values knowledge. Their light side wants peace and values wisdom.
Are you alone here, heretic?
Yes, I am alone. So very alone. Yet, I'm also with myself. Ergo, get out here and greet our guests!
Splits that occur in the Star Wars universe seem to follow a similar purpose. In the Clone Wars episode Destiny, Yoda travels to the Wellspring of Life, home of the midichlorians, where he meets the Force priestesses. There are 5 of them: Serenity, Anger, Confusion, Joy, and Sadness. Dave Filoni sees them as one being who separated over time, and that in order for us to perceive her, she must present all the different sides of herself at the same time. They're basically like Jungian archetypes. In fact, this idea of splitting the self to learn and explore different parts of the self is very Jungian. What's happening on Thra is the sort of thing that happens within each individual when they decide to go on a journey to their true self. Even the Gelfling clans show us this. 7 clans representing different archetypes of the Gelflings: the warriors, the rulers, the spiritualists, and so on.
That's it. We're all one!
In the film, we are shown the ultimate solution to the ongoing conflict.
Hold her to you. She is part of you, as we all are part of each other.
And I was most interested in seeing how the storytellers would represent those themes of love, unity, saving the villain, and not destroying them in this media format. But we also know how this ends, with Kira and Jin falling in love and healing the Crystal of Truth during the conjunction, and then the Skeksis and Uru becoming one. We do not know how the Skywalker Saga ends, but it all seems to be leading up to a similar solution.
How those two are going to develop and affect each other and play off each other, being kind of 2 halves of this whole.
In the 50 years before Jin and Kira reunite the Urskeks, the world of Thra and its many inhabitants is incredibly rich and colorful. And even though we all know that the Gelflings are going to be eradicated by the end of the series, there is an enormous amount of hope in the story. It's very much like watching Rogue One.
What is it they've sent us?
Hope. The world of Thra is a part of the energy exchanged by the Uru and the Skeksis, the Gelflings, the Podlings, all the flora and fauna, and even the crystal. The darkening was an energy that slowly began leaking out of the crystal after it was cracked, but accelerated once the Skeksis started draining it of essence. The energy cannot be destroyed, only transferred, which makes me wonder if the darkening is representative of the darkness inside of ourselves. We cannot destroy it. Instead, we must overcome it and integrate it into our true selves. Know it is there, but choose to lean towards the light.
I cannot defeat my dark half.
This corruption of the crystal reminds me of how dark side users corrupt the Force and bleed their kyber crystals. It reminds me of how the Empire and the First Order mine planets and destroy them from the inside out, turning once lush landscapes into desert wastelands.
Look at the sky. Kanan, what have they done? Lothal looks like it's dying.
Your home isn't exactly the place you remember, kid. Better prepare yourself.
This is a part of the lore of the Vader Immortal series as well, but with a bit of a twist.
Once, our ward Mustafa was green, filled with life.
Where through trying to resurrect her husband using a sacred artifact, Lady Korvax unleashes the power of the artifact, transforming the surface of Mustafar from a lush landscape to a hellscape. And while this can be an allegory for overuse of the planet's resources, it's also representative of what we as humans do to each other and to ourselves. It's all essentially connected. The state of our world is representative of how we treat each other on the smallest level. All we can do is try our best to find our true selves and lean into the light. And all of what we experience will be passed down to the next generation of heroes.